For me, it was sort of future-proofing myself. It was putting my name out there, building a brand. I knew that there was going to be something else in my future, and I didn't know what it was going to be yet. I wanted to build something that would make whatever I wanted to work on in the future a little bit easier.
What happens when a tech executive builds a company, gets acquired, and then decides to create a media empire by creating content for his past self, teaching the person he was 3 years earlier? Today, we're unpacking the real blueprint for building your brand with Scott Clary.
I think if you do over 10 episodes on a podcast, you're already in the 0.1% of all podcasts, some ridiculous stat.
So starting from zero, so you're kind of like taking us through, like, what was that first step? Was it recording the podcast?
The first step was
Host of the #1 entrepreneurship podcast, Success Story, with over 50 million downloads, a weekly newsletter reaching 321,000 subscribers, and the mind behind conversations with Fortune 500 CEOs, Olympic athletes, and billionaires. He's cracked the code on what most people get wrong about personal branding. From 0 followers to millions of views, he's discovered why, and why the secret isn't dancing on TikTok or chasing trends.
So for you, Scott, what would you say is your X factor?
It's just absolute obsession. It's been my X factor in content. It's been my X factor in my career.
If you've been waiting for permission to start that podcast, launch that newsletter, or finally build the personal brand you know you need, this conversation will give you the roadmap and the reality check you've been missing. Because as Scott reminds us,
So it's going to take a long time, but it's going to be worth it. And then if you're okay staying in the game for a long enough period of time, then just know that you can reverse engineer success to expedite your personal brand journey.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of X Factor Marketing, where we spotlight the people and stories transforming lives through marketing, branding, leadership, and their personal X factor. In today's episode, I'm joined by Scott Clary, the host of Success Story Podcast, a top-ranked show where he's interviewed world-class leaders, thinkers, and creators. But Scott isn't just a podcaster, he's a builder. He's grown a powerful personal brand through content, consistency, and a relentless drive to share stories that matter. Today, we're going behind the scenes. How did he build his following from 0 to millions? What advice would he give to those looking to grow their own brand through podcasting and social media? Whether you're just starting out and ready to take your presence to the next level, this conversation is going to be packed with knowledge that you need to have. So let's go. Scott, welcome to the pod. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited too. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, it definitely is. So for those that may not know the full scope of your work, how does Success Story Podcast begin, and what inspired you to start it?
So what inspired me to start Success Story and my podcast was, I think, a reason why a lot of people start creating content. For me, it was sort of future-proofing myself. It was putting my name out there, building a brand. It was so that whatever I wanted to do in the future, it would be a little bit easier. I was a student of the Gary V's of the world, the people that built personal brands, sort of the OGs of the personal brand world, that built like massive followings. And then because of those followings, were able to launch businesses. So, that to me is the guy that I studied, but he launched VaynerMedia and Empathy Wines and Vayner Sports and an NFT project and all these other brands. And I thought at the point when I started my podcast, I was actually building a company that was acquired at the end of COVID. And it wasn't like a huge exit. It was a good exit, but not like, you're getting so much money, you never have to work again kind of exit. So for me, I knew that there was going to be something else in my future, and I didn't know what it was going to be yet. And I wanted to build something that would make whatever I wanted to work on in the future a little bit easier. So if I wanted to do coaching and consulting, if I wanted to start a new company, if I even wanted to work for somebody, I could future-proof myself and sort of add on to my own resume with my personal brand. And the reason why I started the podcast in particular was because out of all the types of content, I'm a big believer that if you're going to build anything, you have to stick with it for a significant amount of time. And I wanted to build an audience, and I wanted to build a type of media that I enjoyed building. So I could have done dances on TikTok. I could have done I could have done LinkedIn content. I could have done Instagram content, which I do all that now. But when I first started, I knew that if I was going to be successful at this thing, this content game, um, time in the game was the biggest predicator and indicator of success. And I just chose a format that I really enjoyed. I chose a format that allowed me to have deep, in-depth conversations with people, a format that I could use that content to repurpose everywhere else onto other social platforms, because I was recording the long form audio video, and kind of like what you do, we push it everywhere. I was recording a format where I could learn and connect with some of the most incredible people on earth. So all of the things were aligning, right? I was building the audience. I knew that in the future, whatever I was going to work on, it was going to be easier because I already had that audience built. And podcasting was just something that was fun for me. It was educational. I get so much out of it because, as you know, when you sit down with people, you learn things. The person I was when I started the podcast is not the person that I am today. And the same could be said even for like a Joe Rogan. If you look at his first podcast versus his podcast now, the guy's gotten a lot smarter. So when you do this kind of content, I think that you do have to be in it for the long run. And that's what I was setting myself up for when I first started Success Story.
Yeah. I mean, if we take that answer alone, like if anyone listening stopped listening right now and unpacked what you just shared, they have gotten their money's worth for the first 2 minutes of this conversation. So
Well, it's what I
thank
believe. It's
you.
what I truly believe. It's what I
Yeah,
truly believe
I mean,
about content.
it's so true, right? Like pick a format you really love, lean into it, be in it for the long run and be consistent. So you have, leaned all the way in, and I want to unpack some of what you have talked about, but being all the way in, you do have a resume of conversations and sharing stories with some incredible people. So when you think back of, some of those conversations, what's a surprising lesson that you have taken away from the conversations that you've had?
So now it's not so surprising because now I hear it a lot. And that's actually really interesting when you start to sit down with people that so just for context, I've sat down with people that have sold companies for hundreds of millions. I've sat down with some billionaires. I've sat down with people that are, sort of top of their field in, uh, you know, health, wellness, cognitive performance. I've sat down with Olympic athletes. I've sat down with all these high performing types, right? And I say that the lesson that I'm going to tell you is not so surprising because then you start to see it in every single person. It's a very similar lesson. But the lesson is these people all have absolute sort of almost delusional to a degree belief in themselves. And it sounds sort of cliche and trite and corny, but what I mean by that is they believe that they can quite literally accomplish whatever they want to accomplish on this planet, and nobody's going to stop them. This personal self-belief, this agency, another word for it is internal locus of control, basically believing that the world doesn't happen to you, but you happen to the world. There's actually a great Mark Andreessen quote, one of the co-founders of Andreessen Horowitz. And I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember the quote verbatim, but basically the quote is, if you put enough energy and time and effort towards anything that you want to build, you'll start to find that the world is quite malleable. And if you do put considerable energy towards an idea, a project, or a business, the world starts to conform to your will just because of the energy and the action that you're taking towards this thing. And it's a beautiful quote, but you start to see this in every single person that's built anything worth building or lives a life that most people would think, oh, how would I ever even get there? How would I become an Olympic athlete? How would I become, a Fortune 500 CEO? How would I become an entrepreneur that sold their company for $500 million? It is this absolute belief in themselves that they can shape the world around them. And I think that's one of the more powerful ideas. There's been a lot of great ideas that have come from the podcast, but that's one of the more powerful ideas. It's just absolute agency and self-belief.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's incredible to see that, I guess, up close, right? And just
Yeah,
to be able to
it's
witness
very
that.
powerful.
Yeah,
And people are, it's when somebody's built something incredible, and I want to sort of put it, maybe take it from this esoteric sort of high level idea of, oh, great, I want to put energy towards something, so it's just going to happen. That's not really what we're talking about here. Um, when you talk to somebody who's built something, and Wendy, this is going to resonate with you because you have these conversations with people all the time. When somebody who's built a company, or somebody who's been successful, and doesn't even have to be build a company, somebody who is C-suite of a big company, anybody who has achieved that level of success, their passion and their energy and their almost just their will towards what they do for a living is just insane. Like if you ask them something about what they do, what their job function is, whether or not it's CEO or entrepreneur or Olympic athlete, they are so in the weeds of what they do for a living. They can break down and talk about their thing nonstop, for hours on end, just going to the minutia, the weeds, the details of every single component of what they do for a living, because they live in it. They just live in it. And when you live in something like that, and when the most mundane, boring stuff to the average person just lights you up and gets you excited, that's what I mean. That's the personality of somebody who's going to be successful, because they just throw themselves into it with 150% of their energy. And on the other end of that is a business success, an Olympic athlete, a professional, whatever. But I think that that's probably a very important idea. Like nothing that you ever want to accomplish is really going to be that easy. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but ultimately the path to quote unquote success is not convoluted. It's actually quite simple. It's just more work than most people are willing to put into it. And that's something that I've picked up on from every single person that I've interviewed.
yeah, yeah, very true. And one of the things that I think is just so fascinating about the world that we lived in and modern marketing as we know it today is platforms like podcasting give everyone the vehicle to get their voice out there. So let's talk for a little bit about building your brand through podcasting. So, a lot of people that we talk to have a vision and they have the drive that you were just talking about to build a brand and use podcasting as a vehicle to do that with. So, what early challenges did you face when you were starting to build your brand through your podcast? And what challenges might somebody face and what advice would you give them if they're feeling sort of overwhelmed at the thought of starting and how would you coach them to sort of work through that?
So I think that the biggest issue anybody's going to have, it could be podcasts. So just to back up for a second, you can build an audience anywhere you want. I'm a big fan, especially because of the first idea we spoke about. To be successful at social media or to be successful at anything, you just have to stay in the game long enough. Really, that if you're in the game long enough, you'll figure it out. But I don't want people just to think that because they see people growing fast on TikTok, they have to figure out how to do little dances on TikTok. Or just because they see a big podcaster, they have to figure out how to get in front of the camera and have these really in-depth, detailed discussions. I want you to do the type of content that you're most comfortable with. Because if you're comfortable with it, you're going to have an easier time doing it for this unreasonable amount of time. So if you like writing, great. Go on Substack or go on Beehive or Kit or Medium or just blog somewhere, right? You can build a great audience via newsletter. If you like recording videos, maybe you do long form on YouTube. Or if you like having conversations like this, you can do a podcast. Or if you like, maybe you don't like long form writing, you like just riffing on the latest hot topic, go on Twitter, right? That's a great spot for that too. But the point is, find a medium that you enjoy and don't just copy like the trending medium, because
Yes, I
you
would
can
say
be
pick an
successful
anchor,
anywhere.
right? Pick an
Yeah.
anchor platform and then work from there.
I think that's the most important. So I chose podcasting in particular because it's long form audio video, and I can take that content and I can split it up, and then I can, I can distribute it across all my social channels. But that was my choice. Nobody has to start a podcast. Now, doesn't matter where you start. It's going to be crickets when you first start, no matter what. It's going to be crickets. It's going to on Instagram, on Twitter, podcasting, YouTube. It's going to be crickets. And that is usually when people quit, right? If you even look at podcast stats, I think if you do over 10 episodes on a podcast, you're already in the 0.1% of all podcasts, some ridiculous stat. Like, it doesn't take a lot to become a successful podcaster, just because most people quit before 10 episodes. So it will be crickets. So that's more of a psychological hurdle that people have to get over, because a lot of people go into social and they think like, listen, I'm so smart, I figured so much stuff out, like, why don't people want to listen to me? I think they underestimate how much noise there is out there. But again, if they start posting and they do it for 1 or 2 years, and we're going to talk about some strategy to expedite
1 or
this,
2 years, right? Like, I just
1 or
want to
2 years,
underline 1 or 2
yes,
years, right?
you're going to start to get some traction. Like, that's when I started to get some traction on my podcast.
1 or 2 years.
Yeah, just a little bit over a year. And keep in mind, that's me as a marketer, not just a creative. There's a lot of people that are just creatives that don't know the first thing about marketing and just start creating, which is fine. But I was very strategic, right? So I was audio, video, podcast. I was turning it into a newsletter. I was turning it into about 30 different social clips, posting every single day. That's a lot of effort to grow a podcast. And it still took me about a year before I started to get some traction. So, it's going to be crickets at the beginning.
Hone in on that just for a second?
Yeah.
So starting from zero, so you're kind of like taking us through, like, what was that first step? Was it recording the podcast?
The first step was recording the podcast. The first step was 2 things. First of all, deciding what the podcast was about.
Yeah.
And then recording it. And I'm a big fan with content in general. I always want to just preface with, this is not just a podcast strategy. This is just a content strategy. LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. When you're thinking about, what type of content you want to create, a really easy idea is just to create content for the you 3 or 4 years ago. Very simple. Very, very simple for most people to understand that concept, especially in the space that we're in, where we're all professionals. We all have, a lot of job experience. If we're trying to figure out how to teach or give value, just teach yourself, 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's a great place to start.
Great tip.
And that's where I started with my podcast. So I started doing conversations and having conversations with sales and marketing leaders about sales and marketing, because that's what I was doing. That's what I was living every single day. So that was really easy for me to talk about, because I was literally teaching myself stuff that I wish I knew 5 years ago. And that's how I started my podcast. Now, there's other forms of content. There's more entertainment, whatever. But people listening to this show, if you want to create a brand, especially if you're using a brand, a personal brand for business purposes, meaning you're trying to drive leads, for example, right? Just create educational value, give tons of value, and just teach somebody that's a little bit earlier on in their career. Or, if you're looking for leads and you're selling a service, you already understand that you have to answer pain points for your customers. You translate some of those questions that your customers ask the most into your content. That's a great place to start. But for me, I was trying to attract and teach people that were a little bit earlier on in their sales and marketing sort of leadership journey. And that's where I started my show. And actually, the first version of my show was actually called Sales versus Marketing. It wasn't called Success Story, which is all sales marketing content, all CROs, CMOs. That's what I enjoyed speaking about. And then it's just, you record it. That's the second step. So figure out what it's about, who it's serving, who's the avatar who's going to watch or consume the content, and then you start recording. And I think that that's really where most people get hung up. Wendy, I've had, because I'm the podcast guy in my friend group, I've had no less than, I'm sure, 25 or 30 of my friends and just peers ask, like, how do I start a podcast? I see what you're doing. This would be so good for my business. And I don't gatekeep. Like I have an Excel doc that lists all my SOPs that I send to every single person that ever asks. And it's what I've done. It's figure out your avatar, your ideal customer profile, if you want to get more specific about it. Start recording. These are the tools I use. This is how I distribute it across all my social. This is how I market it, whatever. This is how I monetize it. And I think there's like 3 people out of that, like 25, 30, who've actually taken the first step and recorded their first episode. So usually it's just recording. And I think that's the hardest part for people because they get so hung up on the details and they get so stressed about. And a lot of people get in their head because a lot of people that want to start a show, especially to drive leads or whatnot, they're scared about looking like a failure because they don't want to put out content and it to get like 5 views on YouTube or something like that.
And your advice
And
is just do it, right?
just
It's
do
just
it
be
because it
your
doesn't hurt,
authentic self. Don't worry about it. Just do it.
because nobody cares.
Yes.
Nobody, like really nobody cares. Like nobody's going to go to your website and then go to your YouTube and see there's like 5 views on your YouTube and say, well, you know what? Because they don't have a lot of views on YouTube, I'm not going to buy their product or service, or I'm not going to work with them. Very rare is that ever going to happen because honestly, most businesses and most business people suck at content. So it's actually expected that you don't have a million person YouTube following, right? A million subscriber YouTube following. So just push it out there. That's step 1. And then let's talk about, I mentioned before, it took me about a year to get some sort of traction. Let's talk about expediting that process. So once you've gotten over the hump of creating and distributing and marketing it, which I think is very important, meaning that if you record a piece of content, especially if it's a piece of content that can be broken up and pushed to other social channels like a podcast, make sure you do that and you have a system in place and you block time for creation and distribution. That's very important into your schedule. Like make it a priority.
Yes.
Which is also a thing that people get stuck up on. They do like a podcast or 2 and then life happens and then business happens. And because it's not making you $1 million out of the gate, you're like, well, it's not a priority. And then you push it off and you push it off and you push it off.
It's not in the calendar. It doesn't happen. So get it in the calendar.
Exactly. So I would say that after you define who's listening or watching or reading or consuming your content, you start creating, you start distributing. You can do that religiously for a month or 2, meaning that you've got your systems in place, you've blocked off time for creation, distribution, marketing. Then you start to reverse engineer what works and what doesn't. So I have people, you call them mentors, call them whatever, that have no idea who I even exist. And I have people on every single social platform that are growing the fastest, that are getting the most engagement, that are basically just absolutely killing it on that particular platform that I study. And I see what's working and I see what's not, and I reverse engineer what's working for them at that point, because usually they'll have bigger budgets than me. They've been doing it for longer than me. Whatever it is, I know that they're just testing at scale. And there's a lot of lessons that I can learn from them that it would take me, again, which it did, a year, 2 years, 3 years to figure out on my own. And when I say reverse engine, go ahead.
I think that's a great tip, because I think whatever business you're in, and my audience is primary real estate agents that are probably listening to us today. I mean, look at other agents who are doing great things on social and re-engineer what they're doing. Listen to those other agents who are doing great podcasts, and then take away those great ideas and think about how you can do that great content as well. I mean, that you don't need to reinvent it, right? Just study people who are doing great things and then give it your own kind of like secret magic touch.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be more complicated than all of that.
And have somebody, and don't just have one person, by the way. Like if you are posting on different social platforms and you're building a personal brand across all these different social platforms, like have a person for each. It doesn't have to be the same. Like I have somebody who I look at for video podcasts, and I look at their thumbnails and I look at their titles and I look at their show notes and I look at their tags and I look at their video hooks and intros, and I reverse engineer and study that person. I have somebody for audio podcasts because I like how they ask certain questions and I like how they introduce their guests. For example, I have somebody on Twitter. I have a newsletter that I look at that I really like to emulate, but not just one. I could have one or two. I like their writing style. I have Instagram accounts that grow very quickly. And also for some of these other socials like a Twitter or an Instagram or a TikTok, you can actually go to accounts and there's a variety of different tools. There's Chrome extensions, but what you can do is you can go to accounts and you can actually use these tools to rank their best performing content. So not only can you see the creator that's growing the fastest and is studying and learn from their style and learn what topics they speak about, but you can actually see that within that creator that's growing the quickest or the fastest, these are the pieces that outperformed everything else. So that's your playbook for content right there. You don't copy it verbatim, obviously, but what's the saying? Maybe I can't remember. It's like
rip off and duplicate.
well, no, it's a more eloquent one. It's like good artists. What is it? Good artists steal or something like that, or great artists steal. It's something like that. But the whole point is like,
yes,
yeah, everything's been done before. So as opposed to you trying to figure out which topics resonate the most, which content style, which hook, which whatever, with which visuals, just look at somebody who's already doing it, who has a $10 million per year, $20 million, $50 million per year marketing budget. And I know that's a lot for a first-time creator, but you look at the Gary V's and the Alex Hormozis, and for podcasts, you can look at Diary of a CEO. I think he pulled in something like 20, 25 million, whatever. He pulled in some decent revenue for a podcast. Look at these people and realize they have teams of people that their whole job is to just study how to do that thing, and know that there's a real good chance, as smart as you are, they're going to figure it out quicker than you, especially if you have a whole other business to run. So I think that that's probably one of the most useful tools, and just realize you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think if I were recapping, find what you're passionate about for the topic, right? Lean into the platform that you're excited about. And we've been talking specifically about podcasting because that is definitely your area of expertise, but whatever platform that is. And then, just be consistent and make that commitment sort of long term. And you've definitely talked about kind of that 1 to 2 year, like it's not going to happen overnight. And the conversation we've just been having has been, learn from people who are doing it well, and then put your own twist on things. And that leads me into, kind of one of the topics that I'm really passionate about. And that is the belief that I have that everybody has a superpower, or what I call their X factor, that what makes you unique. And that is, for me, the cornerstone of all of our personal brands. So for you, Scott, what would you say is your X factor?
So you can tell me if this is a cop-out or not. I don't know if it's a cop-out. I think my X factor, and it's been my X factor in content, it's been my X factor in my career, it's just absolute obsession. And not obsession, I want to clarify what that means. So obsession doesn't mean that you work yourself to death and that you don't have a life and you don't care about your family or your wife or your husband or your kids, or you don't go to the gym. That's not obsession to me, because I think that one thing that is very important to me, actually, that we didn't talk about, especially something that comes from high performers, is that if you are going to be a high performer and successful, I think you do have to be sort of succeeding at all areas of your life. That is a whole different conversation, but I don't look at people who just succeed financially and think that's success. I think that if you're going to be successful, you have to succeed in all parts of your life. And that's a very important thing for me. So I do care about, family. I want to have kids soon. I go to the gym. I care about, my spouse, my better half, Gina, but also my parents. I want to allocate time for them. But with my work, when I'm in it and when I'm focused on it, I'm absolutely obsessed with it. Meaning that I think that if you're going to be successful, you have to find a way to get obsessed about what you're working on. And how I quantify success is when I learn something. For example, I learned something new about podcasting, or I see a new podcast pop up that's growing quicker than anyone else. Like, I get excited, and it's a little bit nerdy, but I actually enjoy researching and spending hours just dissecting what's worked with that particular podcast. Why is that one growing the quickest? Why, out of all the millions of shows in the world, is that particular show why has that one grown, 100x faster than everyone else's? But it's not just podcasts. You get the concept. It's just what you're working on just lights you up. It just lights you up. You get so damn excited about it. I mean, last night it was like 3 a.m, and I just saw one particular. Now I don't just do podcasting. Podcasting is my thing, but I built my brand across all social. So when I see something that's sort of an outlier of success on a social platform, I'm like, oh my God, I got to figure that out. Like, I get obsessed about it. And that's probably what leads to a little bit of success, because you just zone in and you just go into the weeds. And there was this one Facebook account that is just growing very, very fast. And I'm like, okay, so how do I take my podcast content and how do I find a way to unpack the sort of the strategy that this particular Facebook account is using to grow, and sort of marry my podcast content to this Facebook strategy. And basically I spent it was like 3 a.m. I was really up until about 3:30, 3:45. And I was like, okay, I have to go to bed. I have like a podcast in the morning. But I was just studying everything about this account. I was looking at which posts performed the best. I was looking at which, basically who the audience was. I was reading the comments, why people were commenting on this particular. So I have this whole little Facebook strategy I want to try. It doesn't really matter. If it works, you'll know about it, because hopefully my Facebook account will grow much bigger. But the point is, like, when I see something, it lights me up, it gets me excited, and I just want to learn everything about it. And that is, like, for me, a signal that I'm working on the right stuff.
That's an X factor. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's a cop out at all. I actually read several years ago, Mark Cuban talked about he believes that we actually steer young adults in a wrong direction by suggesting that they need to find work that they're passionate about. And he said, like, when you're a college age, young adult, you don't know what you're passionate about. You're just supposed to go out and get a job. And whatever your job is, you should show absolute passion for that job. And then when you get your next job, you should show absolute passion for the task in that job. And he said this notion that somehow you should have, some divine understanding of passion when you're 20 years old is just misleading people. And that really resonated with me. So I don't think that is a cop out at all. So definitely an X factor that you have, I would say for sure. So
I think that everyone should have that X factor. That is, but can I just say one thing just on that Mark Cuban quote? I love it because I think that if people listen, what I do for a living right now is very fun with the podcast and whatnot. But in any job, whatever you're doing, if you apply that much obsession and passion and just diving into the weeds, you'll find that you are going to outpace your peers very quickly.
Absolutely.
Very few people.
That's what I loved about that too. Yeah, for sure. All right. So closing question. If our listeners walk away with one piece of advice to start growing their brand right away, what would that piece of advice that you would give them be?
Well, we've touched on a lot, but I would say understand that it will take longer than you expect, but it will be more fulfilling and more beneficial to your career than you ever thought possible if you do build a personal brand, because my life's absolutely changed since I started this in ways that I never even thought possible, from business opportunities to actual revenue to jumping on stages in front of tens of thousands of people. That's all personal brand. And I never even realized what it could open, the doors it could open. So it's going to take a long time, but it's going to be worth it. And then if you're okay staying in the game for a long enough period of time, then just know that you can reverse engineer success to expedite your personal brand journey. So those would be you take those ideas away with you, and that's all you really need.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for being here with us. This has been such an amazing conversation. And from the power of showing up consistently to real talk on building your brand that actually connects. There's so many takeaways packed into today's episode. So if you've been waiting for the perfect moment to start your podcast, to launch your brand, or lean into social, this is it. Take Scott's advice, start messy, stay consistent, and let your authenticity be your strategy. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with somebody who's ready to step into their X Factor. And as always, remember, we're not just building businesses here, we're transforming lives through real estate and marketing. Thanks for listening to X Factor Marketing. Until next time, keep growing, keep showing up, and keep being extraordinary.